Okay, so through 1.7, perimeter and area on the coordinate plane, these worksheets really want us to use our understanding of translation specifically to help us find the perimeter and the area of whatever object we're looking at. It's usually a rectangle. The idea here is, let's make that smaller. If I can take this point W and translate it along with the rest of the rectangle to where W is located at the origin, so if we can make W prime right here, that would help us. Now, why would that help us? Well, if we translated W, which is located at 5, 4, we translated it to 0, 0. We can then find side lengths like YZ using the distance formula, which I'll just write the distance formula up here. It's x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Because the input here at x1 and y1 would be 0, 0, which would mean all we're really looking at is the coordinate of the other point. I'll show you for example. So imagine we translated this whole rectangle the same distance and direction we did with W. So the idea here is we moved it to the left 5 and we moved it down 4. So I'll do that to all these points. I know X is located at 7, 8. So X prime, our new point, should be located at 2, 4. Y is located at 9, 7. So Y prime should be located, and all I'm doing is plugging this 9 in for X. So 9 minus 5 would give us 4, and 7 minus 4 would give us 3. Okay, so these are our new points, and then of course Z is located at 7, 3, which means when we translate it, it ends up being at subtract 5 and then subtract 4, so we should have negative 1. Okay, now that we have these points, and I'll just draw this here, we have, I'll do it in orange. W prime is located at 0, 0. X prime is located at 2, 4. See that Y prime is at 4, 3. And then finally, Z prime is at 2, negative 1. Let's see if I can get this shape nice. Cool, that worked okay. Now, if I wanted to find the distance from W prime to Z prime, in other words, the width of the rectangle, I can just use the distance formula using Y prime and Z prime. So I'd end up with, and again you'll notice, I'm going to use our Z prime and our W prime. So this should be 2 minus 0 squared plus negative 1 minus 0 squared. And you'll notice that because W prime is at 0, 0, you're really just looking at squaring both of these numbers. -1 squared, which gives us 4 plus 1, which is just 5. So we know that the length of W prime Z prime is square root 5, which would give us, we'll just write W for width. So the width of this rectangle is square root 5. Now let's try that again, but a little bit faster, when we're trying to find the distance from W prime to X prime. Here, let's use light blue. W prime to X prime. So all we'll really be doing is squaring these two numbers and adding them up underneath the square root to find the length. Of the rectangle. This real quick. So we end up with, and I'll just write this, W prime X prime get rid of this. There we go. Okay, so again, let me highlight this. This is what we're using. We will just end up with 2 squared plus 4 squared, which is 4 plus 16, which is the square root of 20, which is, like we said, the length of the rectangle. So I'll redraw this rectangle. It's going to be a little bit off, but the idea here is we found the width. Here's one width, here's the other width, and we know that they're both equal to, we said, the square root of 5. And then here's another length, one length and the other length, they're both the same since it's a rectangle, and that's equal to square root 20. So now we can use the area of a rectangle, which is length times width, and the perimeter, which is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Or in other words, length times length plus width times width. So we know that the area here is square root 5 times square root 20. We know that the perimeter is 2 times, just do this, plus 2 times square root 20. So this actually simplifies when we're looking at the area. You can multiply underneath the radical there. Since 5 and 20 are both under the radical and you're multiplying them. We know the square root of 100 is 10. So we know the area is 10. How about the perimeter though? Well, I'm going to simplify it by writing 2 times square root 5 plus square root 20. This is the distributive property. If I distributed this out, I would end up with my original statement there. Now what I'll do is plug this into my calculator and find that it's approximately 13.41. Okay, so the perimeter is approximately 13.41. Just right here. That's fine. And then of course, on my area, I should have put units squared. So that's how you find the area and the perimeter using a translation to help you. But, let me erase all this. If you were to just really look at finding the distance between 2 points, you could also use Pythagorean's theorem. So let's check it out. If I wanted to find the distance from W to Z, I could just find the vertical change, the horizontal change, and then use Pythagorean's theorem. So in this case, this would be C, this could be A, and this could be B. Now you can count up A and B because they're on the grid. So for example, A is 2. I'm just going to write our equation here. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. In this case, we know A is 2 units, we know B is 1 unit, and this will help us find C. So we end up with 2 squared, which is 4, 1 squared, which is 1, equals C squared. So we get 5 equals C squared. And if we take the square root of both sides, we see that C is equal to the square root of 5. Okay, so what is C in this case? Well, C is the distance from W to Z. Or, the way we've been seeing it, is the width, right? We're saying W to Z would be square root 5. And you can do the same thing to find the length. So I'll erase all this. And we'll redo this. So if we want to find X to W, this length, well, let's look at the vertical and horizontal change between those 2 points. So in this case, this would be A, and this will be B. So let's try it out. The vertical change, or B in this case, would be 4, and then the horizontal change would be 2. So if we wanted to find the length of the hypotenuse of this triangle, we could say 2 squared plus 4 squared equals C squared. 2 squared is 4, 4 squared is 16, and this all equals C squared. Again, if we take the square root of both sides, we get C is equal to the square root of 20. So since Wx we found equals the square root of 20, we know that the other side also equals the square root of 20 since it's a rectangle. And now you're prepared to find the perimeter and area. Now, let's move to this next question.